Yo, what's going on, world? This is Masta Ace from Brooklyn, New York, and you are checking out That's Hip Hop.
Good morning, good noon, good evening, whatever time and place you listen to us from. Straight from the 909, it's Mark, and we got a special guest, legend, MC, Masta Ace in the building, and myself, Quick. Together, that's hip hop. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. It really means a lot. I'm about to give you an intro, Masta Ace. I know there's no intro needed, but I'm going to give you one anyway. Today, we're fellowshipping with a legend, MC, whose style is often described as smooth, clever, and narrative driven. He's one of hip hop's most respected lyricists because of his ability to blend technical skill with heartfelt storytelling. Known for his crisp delivery and conversational flow, Ace can ride a beat with precision while painting vivid pictures of life in Brooklyn, coming of age, and the realities of the streets. His projects are frequently concept driven. Slaughterhouse, Long Hot Summer, and Disposable Arts are perfect examples, using skits and interludes to create a cinematic experience that feels like a full story rather than just a collection of songs. His writing is reflective, often tackling issues like violence, identity, perseverance, and the evolution of hip hop culture itself, making his work both entertaining and deeply resonant. Masta Ace's legacy is that of a quiet giant, an artist who's influenced generations, chasing the trends and not chasing trends of mainstream approval. Despite never being a mainstream name like some of his peers, his consistency and authenticity earned him legendary status among hip hop heads. Many consider him one of the pioneers of the concept album in rap, and his ability to stay lyrically sharp over decades has kept him relevant long after the Juice Cruise days. His work laid the blueprint for narrative rap projects, independent hustle, and longevity without chasing trends. His dedication to the craft shows that hip hop can age gracefully without losing its edge. The one and only Mr. Long Hot Summer, underground luminary whose art and actually isn't indisposable. Brooklyn's finest, a Juice Crew living legend, Masta Ace. Thank you for joining us on the show.
All right, first of all, who wrote that? Because
uh,
I need a copy of that. I need you to email me that.
yeah, you know that in the so we can end the show right there.
It's a wrap, guys.
Yeah, man, it's really a pleasure to have you on. Like I was telling you, you've been really influential here in the IE. A lot of my friends grew up on your music, and myself and Mark included. And you've inspired us to also participate in the art form, making music, writing, raps that have depth, that have substance. That was really huge. My first question for you is going to be, you know, it's interesting because when we first discovered you, it was kind of like way long from when you actually started. We discovered you like right around like Disposable Arts, I would say. Are you aware that there is like this gap in like fans and that discovered you later in your years as opposed to when you first started?
Absolutely, I'm very aware of it, and it's actually a cool thing because not many artists are able to transcend generations of fans and basically make new fans later in their career. It's very difficult to do. Usually, your debut album, maybe your first two albums are the albums that everybody knows, and that's what they know you for, and you spend your entire career really performing records. Your main records are from those first couple of projects that you put out, but because I've kind of had a few different careers in a way. Um, every time that I've restarted, um, I've picked up new fans that didn't even know about who I was previous to like Disposable Arts forward. Most of those fans weren't aware of me before that album, so it's kind of cool. And I get the opportunity to perform around the world, and usually the room is anywhere from dudes in their 50s to dudes that are 18, 19 years old. And so it's a pretty unique experience, to be honest.
It's uh, it's interesting. I was listening to Take a Look Around, just trying to get myself amped up for the interview. And had that project got released in '89, you would have been an artist that spans 5 decades worth of time. I had a quick little question before Isaiah gets back onto his timeline. But what can you say that what kept you consistent throughout all that time from 1990 up to present day today, where you're still releasing very effective projects?
Well, starting off my career on Cold Chillin' Records, under the umbrella of the Juice Crew, with highly regarded artists like Big Daddy Kane, Biz Markie, Cool G Rap, Roxanne Shante, MC Shan. Um, it was very, for someone like myself who was really an unknown coming into that world, was very difficult. And I feel like the entire time since that time to now, all I've been trying to do is prove myself to the fans and to the industry that I belonged in that company. Whether or not people feel that I don't belong, that's just something that I have in my head to kind of motivate me. Sometimes, like when you play sports, for example, um, you have to tell yourself that the opponent on the other side, like they want to come in your house and kill your family, and you have to get yourself in that mindset. And so I've always had this chip on my shoulder, um, for the entirety of my career, that maybe they didn't get the message yet. I'm gonna show them on this next album. I'm gonna really show them on this next album. So I've been continuously trying to prove myself, and at the same time make good music.
Hey, it seems like there's no finish line, but hey, we're all here for it as your fans, man. That's good. That's some great motivational take right there.
Masta Ace, a couple of years back, um, Eminem on Lucky You, he says, where the G Raps and the Canes at, we need 3 stacks ASAP, bring Masta Ace back. I was really curious on how that felt, him mentioning you like that, because that's when it really landed, that bar. And that brought so much, like, that just did so much, like, it made me react in a way like, oh, shoot. Like, what did that do for you when you heard that?
So it was definitely a cool moment. Um, the his shout out accepting the Grammy Award, which was like probably, I don't know, 10 years before that. That was really the moment that caught me off guard.
Mm.
And after that, after he mentioned me on the Grammys, I got an opportunity to meet him, have a conversation with him, got to know him and everything. And so I already knew that he held me in a certain regard among these other artists. So, um, actually, if I'm not mistaken, that's Joyner Lucas is also on that song,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, correct.
Yeah. So Joyner had reached out to me. I guess after they recorded it, he had reached out to me to let me know that M had said this line, and it was coming out soon. So I kind of I knew before everybody else knew that this line was coming, but it was just kind of a nice nod, because there's a lot of other people that he mentions as influences that have way more fans or way more notoriety in the game, than I do. But he still felt it necessary to mention me, so that was cool.
Mm. Yeah, I forgot that there was this somebody, I don't know. Well, I think it was something put together by the label, but there's a track of like you and him on a track called Hellbound, and when I heard that again recently, preparing for this, I was like, oh man, I forgot about that. That was something put together by the label, though, right? That wasn't like you and him in a room or nothing.
No, we weren't in the room, but it was the cats who I put out Disposable and Long Hot Summer with, my partner Filthy Rich, DJ Rob. They How I got introduced to them is they were putting together a compilation album,
Mm,
and they owned this studio in Queens, and they were having artists come through to record songs for the compilation in exchange for studio time. So that was the perfect opportunity for me to get some free studio time, and that's how I recorded Disposable Arts. But the song that they asked me to be on was a song where they already had Eminem's vocals there. Like the beat was already done, his vocals were already there, and they just wanted me to add a verse to it. So,
it's such
you
a cool
know,
track because it's like a Soul Calibur theme too. So it's like
yeah.
such a cool like track. I don't know if a lot of people have heard or seen, but yeah, it's still out there, which is like really kind of cool to
The
kind of.
comp the compilations are called Game Over. They got Volume One and Volume Two, and all the beats, for the most part, all the beats are uh, samples from video games. So that's why. we use that Soul Caliber loop.
Another standout performance or feature that you did that was also one of the early times I heard you was on a feature you did with Cunning Linguist on Seasons.
Yeah.
That was and then RJD2 on the beat. That was like one of the first times that I remember discovering you. And that track was like talking about like the different changes, but like basically like things still stay the same. What is it that keeps you centered on the roots of hip hop and being yourself over like compromising and giving into the mainstream?
Because I got enough of a taste of what the mainstream world was like when my song Born to Roll kind of blew up out in the West Coast and down south. And I got to see what that was, and I realized very quickly that that was kind of like fool's gold to a certain extent because it wasn't something that you could sustain a career over. Um, and so I knew not to chase that. Like it was great. It was a great moment. We had a couple of nice records that got a lot of radio play. We saw what that was, but it was clear to me that that wasn't sustainable. It meant that I was going to have to keep going back in the studio to come up with these formulaic songs that fit a certain radio sound, and that didn't feel true to who I was. And so from that point, once we got that little moment of commercial success, maybe a 2 year window, 3 year window, I knew that it was time to go back to the roots and the fact that I got the taste of what it was like being on a major and how the majors really is just about making money off of you, and it has nothing to do with your uh, creative energy or what you want to kind of put together as a creative. They don't care about that. All they want to know is, can we get it on the radio? Is it something that And so once I started to feel like that was the motivation, I knew that that wasn't what I wanted to do, and I knew that being under the thumb of a label where I had to sit in these meetings with guys wearing suits and ties telling me what kind of records to make, I knew that wasn't a place that I wanted to stay.
And yeah, that's really like yeah, it felt like, by that time when that's one of the first times I heard you, but it did feel like, man, you were so experienced already at that time. And I thought it was really dope that you stayed kind of consistently that way. And how relevant is that now to today's time? A
Yeah,
lot of artists I know kind of face that similar thing or in new ways, that same thing, but in a new way now, like with streaming and stuff, even.
yeah,
I know the popular talk now is like streaming. A lot of artists feel ripped off with that even.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It is.
do you also kind of agree with that sentiment about artists being kind of ripped off through streaming?
I mean, once I learned that you get a sixth of a penny per stream. Once I heard that fraction, I was like, okay, this is not. We're not going to be able to make money as artists in this way. We're gonna have to come up. So that's why touring and merch became super important. Um, because if I had to live off just streaming numbers, it would be impossible. I would love for us to get to a point where, as artists, that we could kind of band together and say we're going to take this away from the labels and sort of almost do a direct to consumer type of music. I feel like I'm at a point career wise where I could probably do that. Um, so my hope is that we get to that point where my fans can come directly to me to buy my music and to stream my music directly from me and not through any of these platforms. But at the same time, are you losing money because maybe the majority of people are going to go to one of these main streaming platforms to get their music. Um, so it's a double edged sword, really. Trying to figure out the right balance of what that is and controlling it. But I know what I can control is my touring, and I can control my merch. And so those are the things that I try to focus on.
What's also interesting too is, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, the appreciation for hip hop music, like, it's definitely different in overseas, right? Like, do you sense that compared to like maybe like doing a show out here in LA or something, like comparing the two, like how different is it?
It's night and day different.
Wow.
I do little dates. I do dates in the US here and there. Like we'll do like a little weekend run, 3, 4 shows in a weekend, whether we're on the Midwest or the Southwest. Um, and we go back home. And typically those shows, they're like at, a venue, a bar, and the capacity of the room might be 350, you know, and you get there for showtime and there's maybe 90 people in the room and it's good energy. I still give the same show whether it's packed or not, but you do the show and it's like, okay, it was cool. We sold a couple of pieces of merch after the show. It was nice. And then you go to Berlin, Germany, or you go to, Paris, France, and you walk in the room and it's 600 people.
Dang, that's crazy.
And it's like, oh, this is what it's really like. This is what it's really about. So the enthusiasm is way different. People are people are excited that you took the flight to even be in their country. For a lot of people, English is not their first language, but they know the words to your songs. Um, there's just like a different appreciation, a different enthusiasm for hip hop over there. And so the last 25 years of my career have, majority of my touring has been in Europe. I've done some really nice runs in Australia as well, Canada as well. I've done coast to coast, Canada like 3 times. But Europe is really the lifeblood of my career. I'm hoping to do more in South America because I've been hitting a few pockets in South America. Um, you know, there's South America is wide open for for me if I can kind of figure that out, and Central America. So yeah, there's still the world is big, man. It's not just this U.S. and we can do these shows in the U.S. and they're cool, but when you walk into a room over there and you see a whole different, you see it's sold out. We've London, we've sold out the Jazz Cafe the last 3 times we were there.
Wow. Yeah, and
I remember. I remember the. I remember the time where where we saw Masta Ace perform over in Garden Grove, over at the Garden Amphitheater,
yeah.
and I'm looking at the stage, the main stage, and I'm like, wait, there's something else performing tonight, and it's like, oh, they're all the hip hop is down around the corner. I'm like, man, they're gonna treat it all like that.
Oh yeah, because that's
That
right.
was,
There was a main stage, but then
yeah,
where we're at
that's
was
the thing that
actually
threw me off.
yeah.
I thought we like missed the date on seeing Masta Ace perform, but then they had they had the whole event on the side room.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it was definitely exactly to your example where it's just a smaller venue with that. I mean, but we've seen your guys' footage when you guys perform out there overseas. Oh man,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
exactly right with it being night and day.
It is.
What's also kind of cool. I just want to mention since we're on the topic of touring and stuff. You actually have a concept album with the EMC on touring, which I thought was actually kind of cool. The whole concept of that. How was it like touring with these guys? Because these guys you ended up building really great friends with,
Yeah.
like Wordsworth and stuff. Like, how was it like forming these friendships on tour with these guys and
It
making it?
was so the friendships were actually started way before EMC ever even came out.
Mm,
We my Disposable Arts tour, which was 2001, we went to Europe, and Punching Words came and Strict came, and that was my first time touring with those guys. I was just we got to know each other on that tour, and it was probably 4 years, 5 years of building those relationships before we were like, yo, let's do a group. The fans will kept asking for it because every time they like Punching Words would open up, and then I would do my set, and then I would bring them back on stage, and we would do stuff together on stage. So it kind of set the table for the fans to see us as a group. But to answer your question, man, nothing but great memories over there with those guys and the fun on stage. And for me, it's cool because it's actually much lighter work. I'm not the main voice. Like everybody has an equal voice, so I get a lot of rest, so I can be really super animated, jump around like a nut, while somebody else is rapping. So yeah, good times, man. Good memories from those times, and I'm glad we did those albums, the show, and then of course the Tonight Show, which was a few years later. But just good times, good memories.
I love the music video you guys did where it's like each member kind of in their own process of doing the like getting ready for a show or and the video kind of takes you on the journey of each member. I love
Yeah,
that back and forth. That was like really cool. Like I love that.
thank you.
You mentioned that. Of course, I have to ask you about the symphony. This will probably be my only chance to get to ask you. But I have to ask something about it. Because it's such a iconic posse cut, huge moment in hip hop history. Being a newcomer on that track with already then legends like Big Daddy Kane, Cool G Rap, and Craig G, uh, it had to be intense. I'm assuming. Did you feel any pressure to prove yourself, or how do you feel like you shaped the verse like that you delivered?
So it's very important to understand the time. Big Daddy Kane was not a legend yet.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
Coogee Rap was not a legend yet. Um, and Craig G was not a legend yet. Kane's, this was 88. So Kane's debut album was coming out that same year. The only thing that he had out at that point, the only thing he had out was Raw, which was a major record. Like, we love that record. He had out Raw, and he had Just Rhyming with Biz, and he had a single called Get Into It. Now, those records were definitely buzzing on the street in New York. Like, everybody knew he was like that next guy. Like, everybody was talking about him. So it was definitely clear of who he was in hip hop, who he was going to become. But it wasn't that pressure like he's already like this established legend that everybody knows, and now I gotta rap, on a song with him. It wasn't that at all.
Mm.
And so, I was definitely a fan because of the songs that I mentioned that he had put out. But I also felt confident about what I could do. And to be quite honest, the way it was presented to me from Marley Marl, it wasn't even the plan wasn't necessarily to keep my verse. It was just because G Rap, Kane, and Craig were kind of hesitant on who wanted to go in the booth first and rap. Everybody was passing the buck. Let Kane go first. Let G go first. Let Craig go first. And they were playing that game. So Marley just turned to me and was like, "Yo, Ace, you got something for this?"
Mm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I got something." And he's like, "Yo, go in the booth, like these guys acting scared. Go in the booth and set it off." And so, but like I said, I thought it was just, he was just trying to break the ice. So everybody would just, relax. And he let me go in the booth first and just lay a ver. I didn't write to that beat or nothing. It was just one of my rhymes I had in my head. And I laid that verse down, not even thinking that he was going to keep me on the song. And it wasn't really until he played it on the radio that I was like, "Oh, he kept me on the song." Oh, I had no idea that I was going to remain on that song. But from what I hear years later, after Kane and G Rap heard my verse, they kind of consulted with mine, like, "Yo, yeah, leave him on it. He's dope." That's how I got on the record.
So were you already like writing before this? Like because you already sound like skilled already at this point.
Yeah, I had been rhyming for so at the point when we did the symphony, I had just graduated college. So I was probably 21. So I had been already rhyming from before ninth grade. Like, I was already well into the rhymes,
Okay.
honing my skills, battling, having battles up at my high school with different people coming from other schools. Like, I was already confident about my ability. And in those days in New York City, you had to always be prepared for a battle. So I probably had 10 to 12 memorized verses just in my head at any given moment. If I was put on the spot, I had a bunch of verses that I could just rattle off. So when Marley said, "You got something for this?" I had a Rolodex. I'm like, "All right, I'm going to say this one." And so I said that one. And, I ain't going to lie. When I heard G-Rap's verse, I was like, "Damn, I should have said something different." I started thinking about other verses I could have said that might have been, because G-Rap verse was just ridiculous. I was like, "Oh my goodness, what the hell?" So yeah, I definitely was second guessing the verse that I chose, but it worked out.
Yeah, because I was thinking you were more of like a sports guy, like during high school years and stuff, just because like later works, I hear you talk about football and stuff a lot. So I
Yeah.
thought maybe you might have been more focused on that, or were you just doing both?
Not ha Yo, it was so many guys on the team that rap. Like we actually had a group. We actually had there was a high school talent show when I was a senior. We did one junior year and one senior year, but my senior year it was a talent show, and me and four other guys on the football team dressed up with the Run DMC leather blazers on, and we got on stage and we performed a song. Five of us. We called ourselves the Come Alive Five MCs, and we did a whole routine and all the girls going crazy because we was popular because we were on the football team. So it was like a dope ass moment in the talent show. But that's just to say that it was at least four other guys on the team that rap and were dope. So it was really a moment, but I was kind of the one who stuck with it and stayed with it. But some of those guys, man, they were nice too in them days.
Yeah, man, I hear you, especially when you're saying like I wasn't thinking of it in that way, like being in New York, being from New York, like kind of having that ready, because like out here you might get asked like, yo, you got something like, but it's very here and there. It's not like it probably as often as you might get asked being from New York. So
Nah, it was a testing ground, man. It was always a testing ground. There was always ciphers popping off, especially outside of clubs and stuff. And dudes would just get in the circle and be like, "Yo, what you got? What you got?" And it wasn't necessarily always a battle. It was just more like, I'm gonna out rap everybody else that's here, or I'm gonna try to out rap everybody else." And so you would just spit, and then dudes would be nodding like, "Yo, that was dope. That was dope. Check this out." And then somebody else around, and that's how New York was, man. In those days, it was very much a testing ground.
mm, um,
Over in your area, was it mainly just uh, freestyling with the pre-stored verses, or was a lot of it off the top as well?
Very few off the top. Very few. Um, it was mostly writtens, but they were writtens for any given situation. So,
Yeah.
um, you would write it if you had a verse that talked about somebody's clothes, you know, you would be like, okay, I got this rhyme with, or I talk about his shoes. So this guy got some funny shoes on, so I'm gonna say that verse about the shoes. So it was more like that, but only a handful of people were good off the head. Craig G was one of the people that was very good off the head. He actually, in some cases, he was better off the head because he was more witty and more funny than when he wrote it down. But there weren't many dudes rhyming off the dome when Craig was doing it. And actually practiced with Craig because I entered the new music seminar battle back in I want to say it was like '89 or something, or the Symphony was out for sure, but so me and Craig would just go back and forth off the head, just so I could practice, just getting to practice. Like put a beat on, he would go for a bunch of bars, and I would jump in and go for a bunch of bars. And there was a point where I was pretty good at off the head, but because I was so technical and so much of a perfectionist, I was always worried about everything rhyming just so perfectly. So it was always safer for me to say a written because I knew everything was going to be precise. And sometimes that's the thing when you rhyming off the head, you got to be comfortable if it don't rhyme and don't get thrown off by it. I'm so much in my own head of that didn't match, and then you get stuck. So I was always worried about that. So I did all of this practicing with Craig for the new music seminar, and then when the lights got bright and it was time to really go against the dude, at that moment, I was like, nope, I'm going with a written. I don't trust it. I don't trust myself. And I said a written, and I went first. And I said the written. It was a dope written, but then he went off the head. And when he went off the head, he was rapping about the judges. He rapped about how much time is left on the clock, and all of that made the crowd go, So I lost just on the strength of something super simple. Like he didn't out rap me, but he entertained more because he was rapping in the moment about what was happening in the moment.
Yeah.
who was this battle against, Masta Ace?
His name was Serge. He was from Cleveland.
Oh wow, okay.
He never. I don't think he ever came out.
But
Like with a maybe he did.
it's interesting though, because you did also the battle with Boogeyman, who I didn't really know of at the time until you brought it up. But it felt like on that one, it felt like that one from you, it felt like it was off the top, whereas the other guy felt like it was written's. Am I
Yeah, yeah,
wrong on
yeah,
that, or is
yeah.
that
You. That's about right. That's about right. Yeah,
yeah?
yeah.
Because it felt like you were more like spitting real time, like what was going from there,
Yeah.
whereas his you could tell, oh, this was polished,
He
practice.
prepared. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was ready. He came. He came. He came prepared and ready.
But I
So
wanted to
yeah.
ask you about that. Like, do you feel like if you would have known he was coming with Rins, would you have come with Rins? Because if you did, I
Oh,
know
for sure.
it would have been unfair if you had come with.
Yeah. So the thing about that battle is the writtens that I had for him were on a song called Acknowledge that had not come out yet. People hadn't heard that song yet.
Oh, I didn't know.
So
Okay.
yeah. So when I got on stage before he even came out, because I think Big Daddy Kane brought me out, and I did my verse about him from Acknowledge, and it got a crazy over the top reaction. Everybody's going crazy. And then they brought him out for this battle, but I had already shot my shot. Like that was my
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I see.
I didn't have no more for him. I said my round before he even came out. And
Top of that, you're going four more rounds on top of you already doing your shot. Okay. I see.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the one thing about, those kind of situations, battles or whatever, is that anybody worth their anybody worth their weight in this game are gonna have to go through that. Gonna have to go through a bad night. Like if you dudes that talk shit like they never had a bad night, they never stepped in the ring ever. They never stepped in the ring. So gotta be willing to step in the ring. If you take the L, you take the L.
But I feel like you still won the war because I mean, I don't know. This no offense to him, but I don't really know of his stuff. Or you're a household name where I know your body of work, what you're doing, like what you're still doing. So in a
But
way, I'm
yeah,
gonna
that
I'm gonna
that
say
night,
my perspective.
yeah, that night motivated me beyond anything. Because after that, the albums that I put out after that, the raps, the rhymes, the
Acknowledge
freestyles,
too.
all of
Acknowledge
it.
is such a classic record. I mean, to this day, some of those bars you spit, I'm gonna just highlight some of them. I'm gonna diss you via email, or and then through a fax. I'm gonna diss you by two-way. Ain't gonna relax. Diss you over fast, slow track or no track. If your shit wasn't so whack, I diss you. I diss you on your track. Some of these bars give 50 Cent his flow back. Some of these bars, man, they're haunting to this day.
So
I would
all of
never
those,
want to be in your way. I'd say that.
so all of that happened before he came on stage,
Wow.
and then it was like, all right, now he's up here. Now y'all go back and forth, and I was like, but I already said my rhyme about him. Like, what else? What else you want me to say? So I just tried to try to bring some other things. It was what it was.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Sitting on Chrome is that one's such a dope project as well, and I have to ask you something about it. And it's funny because I didn't. This was like again, like I said, I came in at Disposable Arts. I missed this whole other like timeline of all the projects you put out. So somebody, I forgot who it was, one of my friends, I think Jesse, put me onto it, and I was like, "What? This is Masta Ace?" I was like, "This is crazy" because it's like a whole different sound.
yeah.
And it's such a big moment too, for Masta Ace Incorporated as a collective.
Mm.
Uh, how did the group dynamic like shape the album's direction, and what did everyone bring to the table?
It didn't really shape the group dynamic didn't really shape the album. It was more me trying to add other voices to this project that I was trying to do, which what I was always trying to do, especially in those days, was present more of a group concept because in those days it was all about the groups. Cypress Hill, Funk Dubious, everybody, all the group, Onyx, like it was all groups that were killing it, and there was very few successful solo artists at that time. It just seemed like it felt like to from a marketing standpoint to have success, you wanted to have a group at least a group concept, the idea of multiple characters. So I was trying to present that. And the label, they rock with me for those two albums. They understood what I was trying to do. And so, but yeah, it didn't, having the group members just made the music a little bit more diverse, a little bit more different voices, different flavors to add to it, but it was still ultimately my solo record, just incorporating other voices into what I was doing.
And now the cruising culture was so much in the DNA of that. Like, were you spending a lot of time over here soaking up the environment, or was it more of like
Yeah,
an outside looking in kind of thing?
I was signed to Delicious Vinyl, which is right there on Hollywood Boulevard. So, I mean on Sunset, sorry, on Sunset. So at that time, we would stay at this hotel right there in Hollywood called the Orchid Suites, and we would stay there for sometimes 3 weeks at a time. Where it was almost like we were living there, and we would be out in LA doing promo. But my very first trip to LA was in when my first album came out, so it was like '90, and I took my very first trip to LA, and I got to see the car culture from a different perspective. I actually came out there with Gangstar my first time in LA
That's crazy.
because we were managed by the same management, and they had an extra ticket, and they were like, "Yo, let Ace go with y'all." So me, Guru, and Premier out, and some other people too, but it was just mainly us. And so that was like my first trip out there, and I hooked up with a couple of friends that were from LA that I met through other people, and they showed me around, and they brought me to Crenshaw Boulevard, and I never saw Dayton's in my life. I was like, "What is that?" Oh, those are Dayton's, and I never saw cars that was on three wheels bouncing. All that stuff was like a whole new thing. I was like, "Wow, this is different." And then so I kind of took that back to New York because I was into cars. We just did our cars differently. We have a in the late '80s uptown on 125th Street by the Apollo Theater. That was a strip too, a cruising strip. And I had a Chevy Blazer with some chrome rims on it. I had 215s and 212s in the back in a box. My boy built for me. So we would just drive around 125th, around the Apollo, and just holler at girls all the time. So
Yeah.
to kind of see the two different worlds in my head, and I was like, okay. And I just started making records, that kind of leaned in that way. Another big influence was LL Cool J's song "Booming System."
Mhm.
I was actually working on my album at the same time as Marley was mixing LL's album, and so I got to hear "Booming System" in my car before it ever came out on the radio. And when I heard that low end, I was like, "Ooh, I want my stuff to sound like this." Like I wanted that low end, so I got Marley to give me a couple of discs with these certain sounds on it that I wanted to add to my music, which ultimately he gave me those sounds, and I just started making super bass heavy stuff after that.
Man, I loved it, man. And do you when you look back now, do you see it as well, how do you see it placed like in your catalog? Like, do you see it as a bold experiment that paid off, or do you see it as an album that helped expand your fan base in a new way?
Both. I definitely expanded my fan base. When Sitting on Chrome came out, there were the majority of LA fans didn't know my career before that album came out. But all of a sudden, I was on the radio. Born on the Road was a huge record on the radio in LA and San Francisco. And I would do interviews, and they would be like, "So how does it feel to have your first single out?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's my third album, bro." Like, and they're like, "Really? Oh, okay." They had no idea. So I had to tell them the whole backstory about the symphony, and like I had to like literally educate some of these people about my career before that song came out. But it was cool, man. It was, I've always called that album my compromise album, and I call it that because it was the album that Delicious Vinyl, the label, asked me for. The success of Born to Roll made them say, "We really think you're onto something with this car culture movement. You could be the voice of this movement, but you got to do a couple more records in that vein. Can you give us an album that speaks to that audience?" And I said, okay, I'm gonna do my best. And I went in the studio and I tried to come up with beats that kind of walk that line of what New York boom bap sounded like, and what kind of the synthy kind of what I thought was a West Coast synthesizer kind of sound. I tried to like walk the fine line of those two those two worlds and kind of blend them together to make a whole new thing. And it was my best selling album at the end of the day. It was my best selling album. So um and I got new fans out of it. And to this day I can perform on the West Coast because of those records.
Ace,
So
is this, I
yeah.
don't know the timeline. Is this actually before the Chronic or is this after the Chronic? Because
It's right after the Chronic, because the Chronic was a huge influence.
wow.
The way Dre EQ'd that record and how clean and crisp it was, it made me want to try to try to make my music sound crisp and clean and loud and knock like that. So sitting on Chrome was my attempt at trying to do something that kind of felt like what the Chronic was. Um, and my attempt was my attempt. It's the best selling record that I've album that I've released, and it did what it did. The label, they kind of fumbled the ball a little bit in the last moment, in most important moments. They didn't have their distribution ready. They weren't ready, and so they kind of fumbled a little bit. But it is what it is.
I got to ask you about Disposable Arts now because that was such a huge record. It's particularly, like I said, a lot of folks in the IE put me onto it, and this is early. This is kind of now where I'm starting to discover music for the first time. I think I'm like probably what 13, 14. And I'm starting to discover music, and your stuff was, sent to me. I think I got it through somebody sent it to me on AIM or something, like a song of yours. And on AIM, AOL AIM, that's how I like first heard you. For Disposable Arts, one of my favorite records and is Take a Walk. That's such a huge record, such a masterpiece of an anthem. Uh, and you fell right in pocket to the beat. The rhymes were flawless. And that's the record that really brought me in to listen to the whole album. And I believe some people were saying in the comments that they also were introduced to this record through Saints Row
Yeah,
One, which is a cool
yeah,
fact on the menu,
yeah,
on the
yeah,
start menu. I guess that's like the first song they hear. So that's
yeah.
also a cool little fact. Um, what was it about this album that made it so special, you think?
So you're talking about, first of all, you're talking about basically a
Oh,
five.
actually, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
So it was a 5 year hiatus in my career. It was after sitting on Chrome, which came out in '95, and at that point, I had been working on an album for a label called Big Beat in New York. I left Delicious Vinyl. I went back to New York to a label in New York called Big Beat, and I was working on an album for them for basically 3 years of work from '96 to '98, or 2 years of work, and they decided in '98 to just basically shelf my album. Like, they didn't want to put it out. It wasn't commercial enough. It wasn't in line with what Bad Boy was doing, kind of with the R&B laden sound, and they felt like that was where hip hop was headed, and I wasn't giving them enough of that. So they just decided they weren't going to put it out. And so I just became really disenchanted with the game, and I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not doing this no more. I'm just gonna be a producer. I had produced like a lot of the rec. I produced Sitting on Chrome. I produced Born to Roll. I produced INC Ride. Those are big radio records. So
Wow.
I thought I'll just become a producer. I'll just start trying to sell tracks to rappers. A lot of rappers in LA, they might work with me. So I started shopping around beats. I was like literally like done rapping. I was behind the scenes. I was finished. And I took a bunch of meetings with a bunch of labels to I brought my resume up there and all that, trying to get a job at a label. And that's pretty much what I was doing. And then in 2000, I went to Philly to work with Jazzy Jeff and his producers. They had a collective called Touch of Jazz. Bunch of super talented producers and artists, and around that time they were working on Jill Scott's album. They were working on Music Soul Child's album. Will Smith was working on the album as well. And when I got to his studio and I saw they had like 3 different rooms, and in each room there was producers in there working on music. It was just like just this incredibly creative environment that I hadn't really been around in a long time. And so I just love that. Just you open the door, they got some beats playing, and they in there just putting keyboards and doing all this kind of stuff. And it kind of gave me that feeling of like maybe I could do one more record, maybe just for the final hurrah. Let me just do one more record, but let me do a record that's on my terms. I just did this last record for the label. They asked me for a particular sound, and I tried to give them a particular sound. It didn't work. Let me make this last record be exactly what I want. Like every beat, every song, every chorus. And so shout to Filthy Rich and DJ Rob, who kind of put the battery in my back. They had the studio out in Queens. Like I said, they asked me to be on that Hellbound song. And so in exchange for me featuring on the Hellbound song, they gave me studio time. So I decided to use that studio time to start working on this new record. And so I started working on songs, and there was always producers coming through that studio with beats, and I picked a bunch of stuff from cats that would just pop up and come through, and we created this album, and it was the exact album that I wanted. And I remember while we were working on it, I remember Rich saying, hey, the album is sounding cool, but there's not really any singles, and there's nothing up tempo. There's nothing. I say, yo, just let me do my record, Like, just no. I don't want to hear. I don't want no input. I don't want no comments. Just let me do the record that I want to do. He's like, all right, and the record got done. And I was recording it out of order, so a lot of the skits and stuff, they didn't understand what I was doing. They were like, whoa, what is this skit for? And I'm like, don't worry about it. Just trust me. And it wasn't until it all got put together into this cohesive thing that only I knew in my head that I wanted to do. It wasn't until it got to that point they were like, wow, this is something. This is special. We didn't know what you were doing, but this is special. And so, boom, Disposable Arts was created, and we were off and running.
Yeah. There was a line let me highlight some bars here out of Take a Walk, where cats die in the blue sky in the sunlight, and you're bound to get clowned if you're not holding your gun right by little kids with great game because they learn to take aim at a young age, and they elude police with the fake name. He's telling them, I'm Bobby Jackson from 3B, when in fact he's really Rashawn from 4D. I love how you have this ability to elongate your vowels and create an impact on your punches with that. But there's so much more going on. Like, what would you say your special power as an MC is? Is it storytelling, flow, cadence, concepts, wordplay? What would you say, Masta Ace, is your superpower as an MC?
I think it's storytelling. I think it's bringing the audience into a story, introducing them to a character or a situation, and telling the story in such a detailed way that they feel like that they visualize it when they hear it. And I've always been that way as a writer in general. Like I've always, even when I was in school writing short stories and stuff for school, I've always tried to make the reader feel like they were in the room, that they could smell the smells, that they could picture what was happening in the room, and not just saying that the man was sitting on the bed in the room, but telling you that the room was damp. There was a water dripping from the ceiling. There was a roach on the floor, and the smell of rotten wood was evident. That's where my superpower lies, is creating a story within these raps and within these bars and within these beats that brings the listener into the story with me. And so, yeah, that's where it is for me.
You kind of surmised everything that I was going to bring up later about a favorite track of mine on A Long Hot Summer called Brooklyn Masala. And Brooklyn Masala is exactly like that with your attention to detail on things. There's even moments in there where both characters are indecisive at moments, and it's like in storytelling that's good, but then you look at it in the confines of a rap song, like indecision in rap songs. It was just like a concept to me. I'm just like, whoa. Like you could put lyrics to that. And that's the impressive thing that I thought about. Because I tell people all the time, it's like if they're looking for a storytelling record, I refer them to Brooklyn Masala because it starts at one point, has a conclusion, and there's a plot to this. It's amazing. It's amazing that you bring it up even before I do. But yeah, in terms of your storytelling ability, because that's one of the best attributes I can give to you, Masta Ace, is that you're a great storyteller. Not only that, we've even said in some clips that you're the master of 1,000 punches in terms of your bars they end with extreme precision and they're very to detail.
Yeah, I would say it's deceptively simple. Like it sounds like you could do it, but not the way you can't deliver it the way you deliver it. I think it's different. And that's the same thing with Chuck D. The same thing with other like with Snoop. Like it's the same kind of thing. Like it sounds simple, but it's something in the delivery that can't be copied or mimicked. Um, I would be amiss if I didn't bring Alphabet Soup up because my friend is such a huge fan of that song. And this is one of the reasons why I really respect your pen because you're probably one of the best, if not the best, at performing what I call trick tracks, like records that are designed to be like lyrical exercises, where it's like you're doing a stunt almost, like a performance blindfolded or a hand behind the back, but lyrically. What influenced you to run through the alphabet like that at that time through with Alphabet Soup?
and tell a story at the same time.
Yeah, and tell a story.
It was fun, man. This is about having fun when you're writing. You guys mentioned disposal. I mean, you guys mentioned Take a Walk and um, Brooklyn Masala. Those are like fan favorites. When I perform in Europe, those are records that like I can't leave the stage without performing those songs. And so Alphabet Soup is not one that gets requested a lot. Soda and Soap does, but Alphabet Soup doesn't get requested a lot. But it was kind of the first of its kind. I think Alphabet Soup gave birth to Soda and Soap just because of the technique. And for those that don't know what the technique we're talking about is, I basically took the alphabet A to Z and I told the story while using the letters in the alphabet to help tell the story. It's kind of for me, it was a fun exercise. That's what it was. It was a fun exercise put to a beat. And it just interestingly enough, the version that there was a version of that song previous, which was recorded at Touch of Jazz with those same producers, with Jazzy Jeff's producers, Touch of Jazz.
Oh, wow.
Shout to my man Darren Henson. And as a matter of fact, Marsha Ambrosius was on the original hook too of Alphabet Soup. Funny enough, she did Alphabet Soup, and then she also did Brooklyn Masala. There's a version of Brooklyn Masala with Marsha Ambrosius singing on it. So these are records that were worked on early on, 2000, 99, 2000. I just trying to figure out what I was going to do with them. But yeah, man, it's all about fun, man. For me, it's all about fun. And doing a song like Alphabet Soup was a fun thing to do. It's something that I had in my head. I want to try this one day. And I had a couple of the lines written in my book. That was back when I had, a rhyme book. And I had a couple of the lines, "Hey son, how you be?" I had a couple of lines, but I never made it all the way through. And then when we started working on that album, then it's like, all right, now I got to finish this joint. And I went in and figured out, found the right beat, and I just wrote the rest of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, on building a track like that, how do you keep it from just being technically like flex, where you're flexing, and make sure that it like has replay value?
I mean, you do that by making sure that you're clever with the stuff that you do, because not what you want, but a lot of times what will happen is the fan that's listening for the first time, he might not even realize what you're doing until he's halfway through the song, and then it's like, oh wait a minute, let me run that back, and then they want to listen to it again from the top to see if they can catch it all, and so those are like those little jewels, those little things that you drop for true heads that followed and love the craft to that level. Not the average fan is not going to care about that. The average fan, they'll be bored by that. They won't be excited by that. They're like, there's too much thinking. I don't want to think. And I don't make records for fans that don't want to think. I make my music for the thinking fans, the fans that are deeper into this music, like how we are. And if other people get with it, that's great too. But I really make fans for. I mean, I make music for the thinking fans.
I think you do that also with I think it's, in maybe next time from Take a Look Around, where you mentioned different shows. I remember
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
remember you were doing a different world. Then I hear you go Cheers. I'm like, dang, Cheers too. I was like, everybody was getting it.
I forgot about that. That
Yeah.
probably was the first time I tried it.
Yeah, so that's a good example of like, like, oh, he's actually doing something. Like, you actually leave little Easter eggs like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I forgot to ask you, Ace, is I don't know if you've seen that clip of Method Man talking on Drink Champs about how he came up with the METHOD man, and he said that man part came from Music Man, which is on your album.
They,
How
yep.
did you feel about that?
That was cool to hear. I never knew that story. Like we were never in a room together where we could sit down and have a conversation. So it was a great story to hear. Never would have known that,
Yeah,
but
that was,
never would have known that.
I thought that was so cool. I wanted to also ask you in regards to Long Hot Summer, since we're on that topic. That album is incredible as well. It was such a classic, and I
Thank
remember
you.
listening to it for the first time on my iRiver. It was like knockoff of an iPod. It was called the iRiver. But the skits and the storytelling, that was on another level. We got into an argument on the show, just on the discussion of who Fats represents,
Mm.
because one member thought he represented like the inner conflict between right and wrong. One member thought he represented maybe just the music industry. Uh, what does he represent on that album for you?
Um, he definitely represents the inner conflict between right and wrong. So whoever said that is right on point. Um, and he was influenced or he was inspired. That character was inspired by a guy I grew up with in my neighborhood who was my road manager early in my career and was on the run from the law. Like all of that, like was really part of who he was. And I didn't know he was on the run. Like he's literally hiding in plain sight. As my road manager. When he was on the run, and so once I found all of that stuff out, like years later, it just when this character came about, I was like, oh, I'm going to use him as the kind of the inspiration for this character. So I wrote it in that way. But yeah, it's kind of cool when fans look beyond the surface to try to figure out what the meanings of things are. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Good Old Love is a huge record. Definitely one of my favorite beats from Ninth. And someone one of the things that I think is cool about that record that still kind of holds true. You say the game's changed, the game is strange, the game is lame, and it ain't the same, but that's how it is. You can ask Jizz, you can ask Biz. We did it for the kids. Listen here. As I continue on, you say something that I think is really almost kind of prophetic. You say, I'm going to keep it on living. I'm going to keep being driven. I'm down to earth and I'm close to the ground. And I spit shit better than most around. This is how hip hop's supposed to sound. Tell them cats post this down now. At this point in time, when you're working on Long Hot Summer, were you not really like feeling the love from peers or fans, or I guess what the motivation was behind, Good Old Love? Because I'm sure the beat probably steers your topic, but then at some
Yeah.
same time, some real things come out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely. I was definitely in a place of feeling kind of underappreciated, by the industry, by fans, just by the world in general. Underappreciation. So once again, going back to that chip on the shoulder and finding that motivation to be as fierce as possible on and attack these verses and these bars the right way. So just creating that chip on my shoulder, and that was part of it. The feeling of being underappreciated and overlooked, underappreciated and overlooked.
The Grind is also a favorite track of mine. I listen to that till this day at work, and it's such a motivational masterpiece. Um, and plus, I read some comments on YouTube where they were saying this album is what you only find once in a lifetime, masterpiece. Another person says, love this track. Plus, I'm biased because my cousin Apocalypse is on it. Another person says,
A little biased.
that's funny. Another person says it hits you right in your soul. Unreal. The whole album, 20 years later, and still hits just as hard. I'm in awe. This record, I think, really shows your experience in the music industry. And you talk about how easy it would be to get like addicted to fame and money, but you already know like how some lose it all that way. What is the result of the grind and the work that you put in Masta Ace? Sometimes wearing all the hats. Like, what is the end result of that now since you've been putting on the grind for so long?
Yeah. Well, the end result is being able at 30, roughly 35 years since my first album, and being able to have a 20 city tour coming up in October and November, where I'm going to be in Europe, going to great places like Paris and London and Madrid, and um, that's where it pays off. Where you feel like, you know what, all that stuff I went through was worth it, because look where we are now. Look what we're doing right now. And so um, that's where the payoff comes in at, in those moments, and you walk in these clubs and there's 400 or 500 people there to see you. And after the show, they all come up to the merch table. They want to take a picture. They want you to sign their vinyl. Um, those are the moments that make it all kind of worthwhile.
I love
How
that.
do you? I had a question about since we're talking about projects. We also got into a couple points where you talk about the start of a couple of your albums, but how does the how has the how has like the internet and social media changed the dynamic of the idea of a street team? Because I know you would need a street team early on, but
Yeah.
how does that factor in now with shows, albums, anything that you have to do in terms of advertising?
Yeah, I mean, now you really use social media as, to a certain extent, your street team. That's where you now reach the fans. I remember early in my career, I had a street team van, and we would drive around Brooklyn and jump out of the van and go put up stickers and posters everywhere, or hand out promo items to kids on the corner. A couple times we jumped. Actually, one day we jumped out by Marcy Projects, and a group of kids went running. They thought we was either police or the enemy. They all took off running. They thought we were trying to hurt them. But yeah, those street team days um, are definitely pretty much behind us. But sometimes I feel like there's still a place, and there's still room for it. But most fans are locked into their phones. Everybody's head is down and they're looking at their phones. So that's where you got to hit them.
Gotcha. And there's never like a rollout for any of the shows in Europe. It's still all it's still all going within the digital landscape.
I mean, for the most part, they do post. When we go over there, we see the posters. They do. I don't know, like, and I'll see them. They actually do snipes, like the big, at the bus stops, the big bus stop snipes. Like they still do those in Europe, which is kind of cool. They still
Yeah,
do those.
and they definitely showing love out there.
Yeah.
That's all those more examples than we needed.
Yeah. It's like when they were trying to bring Dwight Howard to LA. Remember they were like putting him everywhere.
Whether any athlete needs to go to any other place.
Masta Ace, I wanted to ask you about Beautiful because that was another track. It's funny because my first home computer was a hand-me-down and from a family relative, and one of the tracks they had on there, just random tracks, they had Beautiful on there. So that was also another time an interesting way I got introduced to you. But that track it stands out because a lot of times you find rappers, rapping about drugs, money, hoes. And I think this is it's like really refreshing because you're rapping about like the beauty of life around you. What inspired you to take that approach, and do you feel a sense of responsibility to balance the narrative in hip hop sometimes?
Yeah, it needs balance. It's always needed balance. We in the early '90s, I feel like we had balance. There was enough other stuff that there was enough messaging out there that balanced out the gangster stuff. So it was cool. And you could have a tour with NWA and Kwame and Kid and Play and like you can mix it up. Heavy D, you know what I mean? Like Rakim, you can mix it up and have a nice tour. But now it's kind of like everything's kind of like painted with one color. And so, writing that song, I just the music itself, produced by Kool-Aid, by the way, from Croatia. The music itself, it just sounded like a beautiful sample, and it made me. Sometimes the music leads the narrative, it leads the way towards the writing. So the music made me feel like, oh, this loop is so beautiful. I want to, and so I just started writing based on that, and then obviously I shaped the lyrics to talk specifically about the beauty of life, the beauty of things around us, because not enough people take time to look at that, to take time to acknowledge and embrace the beauty of things. We're all focused on what's negative, what's bad, what doesn't make us feel good, and so and that's another fan favorite. That's another record that I can't leave the stage without performing. It has to be performed. So, and it's always towards the end of my show that I do that song. But people love that record, man. They love that record. I love that record.
Yeah, man, I love it still holds up. That's what I think is the most beautiful part. It's like you could do that some years back and it still holds weight like to this day. That really shows you like that's really a work of art. I do have to mention this because I think it's so cool. You did a tribute to your mother, son of Yvonne. I thought that was awesome. And then also on top of that, it's produced by MF Doom, which is really crazy. So I wanted to ask you some questions regarding that.
Yeah.
Putting that together and just did revisiting memories feel more healing or more challenging writing that project?
I wrote that project because I needed some healing. I needed some therapy. Like at the end of that album, the character that's playing me as a young kid, he just does this whole speech and he says thank you. He's thanking his mother for all of this stuff because I never got a chance to do that. So it was a in a way it was therapeutic for me. When when you lose a parent and unexpectedly and you didn't get a chance to say things that you wanted to say, how it could just eat you up forever, like, and so in order for it to not eat me up, I had to figure out an outlet, a way to get beyond it, and that album helped me get past it.
You rapped over MF Doom's instrumentals with the whole album, and it gave it also this like very distinctive feel. How did you decide on that approach, and what was it about MF Doom's beats that connected the story you wanted to tell?
So the way I discovered these beats, a good friend of mine, my guy Roman Oben, who played in the NFL for many years. He and I are like hip hop brothers, so we're always talking about different music. And one day I was riding with him in his car, and he was playing he was playing these instrumentals. I'm like, "What's these beats? What's this?" I wasn't familiar with all of the Doom beats, and he said, "Oh, this is all Doom instrumentals." He put out an instrumental album. It's called Special Herbs.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I was like, "Oh," I said, "Okay." I said, "Yo, let me get a copy of that. I like this because I don't really like listening to the radio that much. So let me get a copy so I can drive around with it." So he gave me a copy on CD, and it was only maybe 60 of the beats. I think Special Words got to be like 200 some beats, but I had like 60 of them. So I'm driving around, going to the studio, going different places in New York City, and I'm playing Special Herbs. And some of the beats started speaking to me. They started. That's what I mean. Like sometimes the music will spark you to write a song. And so certain songs where I've started getting ideas for songs, for lyrics, for songs. And so I had the idea of doing like a mixtape. I say, I'm gonna take a couple of these Doom beats. I'm just gonna throw a little free mixtape out there because I was in between projects anyway. So I was like, let me just rap over a couple of these and we'll put it out as a free mixtape for people. And then Fat Beats, I had a meeting with Fat Beats about next project we were working on, and my partner Rich mentions, oh yeah, Ace has got this mixtape he's trying to do over Doom Beats, and they're like, you gonna put it out for free? Wait a minute, why would you do that? And so they made us an offer for it as an album, and it turned it. So once they said, okay, we're gonna give you a budget to do it, then I knew it couldn't just be a mixtape because for me, a free mixtape would kind of just be maybe some throwaway bars. But I'm like, nah, if we're gonna make this a real album, then it needs to be about something. And then that's when I said I'm gonna make it about my mother because I was still kind of struggling. There's many years that my mom passed in '05, so this was 2011. So 6 years I was still kind of like struggling. So I was like, I'm gonna make it about that. And once I started writing it, and I had a purpose and a direction for where I was going with it, then I knew, okay, this is gonna be a special record. And that's how it came about. And I'm glad. I always got to big my guy Roman up for even exposing me to that because it might have just kind of slipped past me. I might not have ever even got to hear that collective of beats and be inspired to do that record.
Mm. Yeah, it felt like opening like a time capsule. That's how it felt.
Yeah,
Listening to
yeah.
that album because they had like just a lot of snapshots of your youth. How did you balance between painting like these vivid scenes with like making the album resonate with the younger audience who might not have lived in that same era?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. It was me telling my story for those that wanted to hear it. Like I wasn't thinking about how it would resonate with anybody. It was just like me just being honest about my youth. I hadn't really spoken. I hadn't really dealt with that time period in my life in my on my records before. So I just wanted to kind of tell a little bit more of my story on that album, and I truly didn't think about who, if anybody, younger fans, older fans, whatever, would it would resonate with them or not. That wasn't on my mind at all.
Looking back now, it was so centered around like your mom's influence. What's one lesson or piece of wisdom from her that you hope listeners take away?
Um, Definitely, if somebody hits you, you hit them back. That was always like a super important message in our neighborhood. 'Cause you can't let people run you over. You can't let people just do what they want to. You bully, you push you around. Like you gotta stand up, even if you're scared. Like you gotta stand up to the person. And so that was one of those lessons that I took away. But other things were just like just having character, having the type of character that whether you're alone and nobody's watching you do it, do what you're doing, do the right thing in that situation, even if you think nobody's watching. Um, and when I coached high school football, I would always tell the young men there, I was like, character is what you do when nobody's watching. And so being able to do the right thing when nobody's watching is what character has always been about for me. And so that's one of the things that I took away from my lessons with her.
Yeah, and then you also kind of also explore, a little bit of your upbringing and the decisions being made of like school, where you were going to go to school. And I thought that that was also really cool to kind of to understand like the dynamic and like how much of a different path it could have been depending on what school you even went to. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, I thought that was also just very brilliant, very brilliant, and bringing us in there to really understand um, how much could it really have changed the trajectory for you depending on which school you would have went to.
a lot, a lot. Um, and not just the school I went to, but there were lessons. There were lessons that were taught to me about character and and right and wrong that I didn't even realize I was learning until that those moments came up. And that was a really crucial moment in my younger years where my best friend, the kid I hung out with every single day, decided that he was going to go with these other guys to go snatch jewelry off the main street by our house. And we were in the middle of a football game in the neighborhood. Like we were playing two in touch. And these guys came around and they basically were recruiting any of us that wanted to go with them because they were about to go and get some money. And like I said, this is a kid I hung with every single day. And he decided to go with them. And I decided to stay and keep playing two in touch football. And it's that day always stands out to me because our friendship never was the same after that. When he left and went with those guys, he started going with them all the time. I started seeing him less and less. Then I went to high school, and then I was seeing him even less. And then during that time, he's running around the neighborhood robbing people and going to jail and this and that. Like when I went to college, he went to jail. So it was
Wow.
like so I always think back to that moment and I go, what made me that day say, nah, I'm gonna keep playing two hand touch. I'm gonna stay here and keep playing football. Like, what was it? What was the thing? And I can only point to my mom. Not even realizing mom and my grandmother. My grandmother had a big part of it too. But not realizing that those lessons were being taught and instilled in me to do the right thing when nobody's watching. Um, it was happening right in front of me. I didn't notice it. I didn't realize it.
Man, that's it's just so crazy how just it seems like it wouldn't be so significant, but yet it is just on the path, and it's really kind of crazy. I also want to touch on before we get into the musical and things you're working on, which is incredible, by the way. The Brooklyn story, which I thought was also really cool, very cinematic, and it takes you through the Brooklyn life. And what inspired you to structure an album as a concept piece around the city, and how did you guys decide to what stories to tell?
So a Brooklyn story is completely about my guy Marco Polo's life. He's from Canada, Toronto, Canada. He moved to Brooklyn in 2001, actually, right when 9/11 happened. And he when I as I got to know him over the years, I learned more about his story, and I thought that his story was a very interesting story that needed to be told. And at that point, I felt like I had kind of told a bunch of different parts of my life. So here's a great opportunity to tell Marco's story, which he couldn't believe that I wanted to tell his story. And I'm like, yo, let's this is perfect. Like, let's do it. So he allowed me to kind of lead the way in terms of the skits and the storyline and tell his story of a young kid moving to New York from Canada with only a couple bucks in his pocket to try to chase his dream of being a hip hop producer. And so we did Brooklyn Story based on his life, and you know, super well received album. People loved it. The video we shot was featured Smith and Wesson. Was a huge success. I think it's almost 3 million on YouTube, and another song, Get Shot, is like almost 5 million. Like we did numbers with that record that we didn't expect we would do, and it also brought us back overseas to tour. The tour I got coming out with Marco is in support of the second album we did called Richmond Hill, and we're already 10 or so songs into our third album together. So we're working, man. We're working.
Yeah, because even Richmond Hill actually starts with the genesis of Marco Polo's
His
life.
birth. Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
went back. I went back.
You're
Yep.
writing, you're getting prequels ready. You're like a
Yeah.
director of sorts now. Don't
Yeah.
wait for the trilogy.
It's awesome.
Um, that's a pretty unique concept too, because I'm going in with the mindset of thinking like, oh, like if 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 Ace is in the mix doing the verses, and then Marco Polo's the one the story, like he's the story in the skits.
Yeah.
How do you guys build on that? Like, how does that come together? Because that's a very unique thing. Because I'm like, I don't think it's ever been done where like there's compilation out there's albums like Grandmasters with Muggs and Jizza, but then there's ones where it's like, no, these are direct stories of both people, but you're doing the verses, and it's
Yeah.
predominantly about Marco Polo.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, he just trusts me, man. He trusts me. He knows that like kind of these concept albums are my thing, and he trusts me. Obviously I'll run it past him like, yo, this is the skit that I wrote. These are what do you think about this? And I try not to make it too specific, so I'll make it kind of more general. Like it's not 100%. It's a little bit of fiction mixed into it to make it entertaining, obviously. But um, yeah, the skit, the concept for the new album, which is coming soon. I figured out, and I've already told him about that. So he's like, oh, this is gonna be crazy. So
Hmm.
I'm excited about that too.
Nice, nice.
So I wanted to ask you, you're working on a musical, which I think is, man, it's so incredible, Ace, and it's titled The Falling Season. Uh,
Yeah.
and when I first heard of it, I instantly thought, wow, this is so needed. And I know there was already I know Hamilton had came out. It got a lot of praise for having complex rap as its method of songs, but to have a real legend like bring it to hip hop, like to have it like in Broadway, that to me just felt right. What is the Falling Season about, and how did those ideas come about?
So the album is named after my album, The Falling Season. You'll be happy to know that the main character, he's a 17-year-old kid who's going into his senior year in high school. He's trying to be the first in his family to go to college, and everything seems like it's going in the right direction. But the summer before his senior year, he gets some very devastating news that's kind of shaking his world up. He confides in his best friend, who just so happens to be Fats, who we know from our album. So Fats is the best friend, and if you remember from my album Disposable Arts, there was a girlfriend character named Lisa who was telling him, you know, what are you talking about? You going to school? You need to, get with my brother, who's the drug dealer. You need to get with my brother and go get some money with him. And so Lisa is also in the show, and her brother, who is only mentioned loosely, I bring that brother character to life. He's like one of the main antagonists against our main character. So I've pulled influence from these albums, from Disposable, from Aloha Summer, from uh, from the Fallen Season. But it's a unique story, fictional story that I wrote. It's loosely based on my life, very loosely. Like these things didn't happen to me specifically, but loosely based on my life. And all the raps are original songs written specifically for the show. I wrote all the music. I had help with melody. I had three melody writers to help me with melody because I don't really write melody. And I have three beat makers slash producers who did the music. And we it's like 14 songs. But it's not just a musical. It's a play. It's a play with music. So there's a lot of acting. There's a lot of dialogue, but then there's songs as well. And the songs help push the story forward with these different characters and attention and all that. It's like pretty incredible. At this point we're still in development. We've had a stage reading where we casted it. We went out, had auditions, had people audition. We casted it, 14 actors on stage, and they had the scripts in front of them. Our director was so amazing that he would have the actors move around on the stage with the scripts. So it felt like you were really watching. Like if you watched it, you would think you were watching a show, and it's really just a blank stage with chairs and music stands. But when you're hearing the music and you're hearing the acting and you're hearing and watching these characters cross each other on the stage and move around, you really feel like you're watching the whole show, and it's not even the show yet. But we did the reading back in 2023, full stage reading. It was amazing. Now we are in the process of talking to investors to try to get investors. But my goal, you mentioned Broadway, but my goal is not Broadway. My goal is the West End in London.
Oh.
I want to start there because, like I said, my fan base in Europe is so loyal and so dedicated, and they support. And I know my German fans will catch the cheap EasyJet flight for €60 to fly into London to watch it. There's a direct train from Paris to London. There's a direct train from Amsterdam to London. So I know my Netherlands fans are going to take that train in. I know my fans in France are going to take that train in. But I feel confidently that once we get this thing in production, we're gonna have an amazing story to tell in the end. Broadway can wait. Like Broadway, y'all gotta chill with, because Broadway is all about. Well, how many records did he sell? Is he platinum? That's what they're focused on. They're focused on the money first. It's about the art first. The money will come. If the art is good, the money will come. And so that's what I'm focused on, is the art. It took me 8 years and counting to write this thing. I'm still writing it to this day. I'm still tweaking and making changes. So we're 8 years and counting. But it's a really fun story. It'll definitely take you on a journey. Highs and lows, emotions, highs and lows. Amazing.
Not to take any wind out of the sails for what you're doing now, Masta Ace, but do you feel like the framework's there for projects like A Long Hot Summer to do the same thing? Because I see it skit wise and narrative, storyline wise, but I wanted to see your perspective since you're here.
So I don't see A Long Hot Summer as a standalone thing, but that's why I tried to take the Fats character and pull him from The Long Hot Summer. That's why I pulled the Lisa character from Disposable. So to me, these albums are represented in my show. Like they're all represented in some way in the show. The storyline is there, and it's kind of based on these albums. Cool. So yeah, they're all represented, and in the bio of the show, it's mentioned influence from inspired by Disposable Arts and Long Hot Summer and The Fallen Season.
When it comes to your albums, it feels like a movie. It feels like skit. Because you have the skits and the transitions. How did you decide like what moments from that period of your life to include? And were there any other stories that you felt might have been too personal to share on there?
No, I mean, not really. There's nothing that's too personal to share. It's just I have to always keep in mind that it's about the entertainment value as well as trying to tell a story. So I'm going to try to tell the most entertaining parts of these true stories, or these that are influenced by these true stories. And writing the skits for those albums is what led me down the path of writing a musical, because I'm like, okay, I've already been doing this. Like I already kind of know how to write characters, how to write dialogue for characters. So this is just a more expansive version of it. But I started off with a couple of scenes, and then they assigned our lead producer, because it was taking kind of the first year took a long time to kind of get the first 3 scenes written. And he's like, I'm going to assign you someone called a dramaturg or dramaturge. And she's the person that you'll have to meet with every single week. and you'll have to make sure that you have something written before your next meeting. So for the last 8 years, or at least the last 7 years, once a week I met with this woman named Kate Camarada, and every time I met with her, I had to have something new that I had written to the script, and so it's what kept me accountable to the writing process. Because if they just left it up to me, like I'll probably still be on scene one. I'll probably still be on act one, um, because I would only write when I felt like, I feel like writing today. Let me write today. Or I got a long flight. Let me write today. But once I knew I had to meet with somebody once a week and have new dialogue written, it got me on schedule. And man, it was an amazing process. It's an ongoing process because we're not even finished yet. We got quite a ways to go. We got to raise this money for London.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing. Let me see what else I want to ask about this. You worked with a lot of veterans and newer voices. Oh yeah, so for the album itself, how did for the album like the I'm now talking about the album, for the following season, how did you select features and producers when making this feel or sound like that time period that you were visiting? Because I didn't think about it at first, but when I listen back, I'm like, yeah, yo, he made it feel like that time period as well. Was that like something consciously that you were thinking about, and like how did you pick that out to do that?
So the production on the Fallen Season album was all done by one producer.
Oh
His
wow.
name his name is Kick Beats. He's from LA, and he had produced a couple of songs for the EMC albums that were pretty amazing. And he had sent me a bunch of music, and he's not a sample heavy producer. He does sample, but he's not sample heavy. So a couple of the joints he did for EMC had no samples in them, and I'm like, yo, you might be the right guy for this next album. And so, and he Kick Beats actually produced roughly half the music for the musical as well.
Wow.
All the really cinematic stuff, the heartfelt stuff was all produced by him. He's a amazing musician and producer. But in any event, Kick Beats laid the backdrop for that album, and so I just picked beats from his collection of beats that fit that time period in my life, and it was like the perfect marriage. And something tells me like the reason that I came across him and the reason that we ended up working together on this album is really because of this musical. It's really because of this bigger picture that like we didn't get there yet, but I feel like that's what it's going to end up being, why we were why we were put together and why we came together to do this.
And because just selfishly, I kind of want to be there as well. Like you're doing it also here as well, like but in New York, right? As well. Are you guys doing it?
So 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 far, like I said, we did the reading in 2023. That's the only time that we've heard we've seen actors performing the entire show top to bottom. We haven't done the next step would be to do a workshop version of it, which would be a little bit more advanced because at that point, when we do it, once it becomes a workshop, the actors now have to be fully rehearsed. They're not walking around with the script anymore. Um, there might be some what do you call it? Projection screens to kind of like let the audience know what room they're in or where they are in the city, like where they are. There might be a few small pieces of furniture. So it's still a few steps away from a full production
Mm.
where the stage rotates and the whole entire room, rolls in. But the next step would be this workshop. If we're able to get the budget together for the workshop, then that'll be something that you'll be able to come to. But
Mm.
it won't be a traveling show, not at this point. The only thing we may be traveling with is a couple of months ago we did what's called a cabaret. What a cabaret is songs from the musical being performed on a stage in a room where you're sitting at a table with a dinner menu, some drinks, you order some food, some finger food, you sit down, you have dinner, and you sit at your table and you watch us perform the songs from the show. We did that a couple months ago. I narrated the whole story. So I was like basically the narrator, and then I actually performed the Fat songs as well, just to because I knew people were going to want to hear me rap at least. So I performed as Fats in that show. There's potential for us to take the cabaret around to different places. So that's something that could possibly happen.
Mm.
So you might get a chance to see the cabaret. It won't be the full show with the acting. So cabaret is only about an hour, but the full show is a 2 hour show with the
Mm.
intermission. But when the time comes, brother, you'll know about it, and you'll be in the room when the time comes. We're still in development, but just keep an ear and an eye out.
Okay. And going back to the album itself, it deals with a lot of like peer pressure, uh, and dealing with the adversity. Like, how much of the Falling Season was about inspiring young listeners, who might also be in that same place currently?
Yeah, a lot of it, because I just remember those moments, and when I was in that age, when you're around 13 to about 18, 19, there are going to be these there's going to be these opportunities to do the wrong thing, to make the wrong decision, to make the wrong choice. And so I know I went through that, and I know every young kid, from at least from the inner city, and even maybe not even just from the inner city, just in general, when you hit that age, there's always going to be somebody that gives you the opportunity to do the wrong thing. And so it was super important for me to express to young listeners that, yo, you're at that age where it's going to happen. You just got to make the right choices. And so I tried to present that to the audience, to the listeners, in a way that was entertaining, that the beats were still knocking, but that and that you got a sense of who I was as like when I was in high school.
Looking back now, how do you see the Falling Season? Like, what does it like represent in your catalog? Is it a personal milestone, a gift to the fans, or maybe a closing loop in your own story?
The important thing about the fallen season for me, one of the most important things is it was my first time ever working with just one producer, and it opened up this door. I had never thought about. I didn't think that there was producers that I could just be like, all right, I'm just gonna work with him. But it because I was always trying to kind of like cherry pick the beats for my albums, and I like him, but I only want those two beats, and I like him, but I only want that one beat. But now it kind of it created it sort of put me in a different creative space now. Now it's here's the production ideas. Can you create a cohesive project with this one sound? And it could be he's not even a one. He has many sounds, but it was still kind of under that same umbrella of just him. And so that led to me working with Marco. It made me realize that this is kind of cool. It's less work because you don't have as many people that you have to like manage and deal with. When you got seven, eight producers on an album, there's a lot of personalities. People work differently. Some dudes are on point. Some dudes are not on point. Some dudes get their stuff in on time. Some don't. Like it's always all these extra things that you got to deal with. But when you're dealing with just one person, or you can just call that person and be like, "Yo, I like these drums, but I think we need to, do something with this bass line." And he's like, "I got you." And the next day he gives you a new bass line, like, "Oh, it's perfect." Like it made it a little bit easier. And now working with Marco, I don't even have to be involved in the mixing anymore. I've been involved in mixing and mastering of every single one of my projects up until a Brooklyn story. I'm there every step of the way, from the creation of the songs all the way to the final product, down to the artwork and everything. But now for the first time, Marco kind of takes that on a little bit. So I still have my input, but I don't have to be sitting in a room for every mix, every master, which is kind of cool.
Uh,
Next chapter.
Yeah, love it, man. Lastly, like I mentioned earlier, you've been a big influence here in the IE. And lately we've had a lot of buzzing artists, who are aspiring to really, just to really do it with their art and any encouraging words for some of the, i.e., artists out here that are, doing it themselves and trying to really create something special with their artwork.
Yes, man. I think it's super important to make sure that whatever music you're creating, that is coming from who you are. Don't try to create music based on what you think the radio wants to hear or what fans, quote unquote, want to hear, or try to make songs that are formulaic just because they might work and you might get a hit out of the deal. Stay true to who you are. Whatever you're rapping about, it needs to be accurate to who you are as a person, what your life is really like at that in that moment. It's very easy to fall into the pattern of just rapping about what everybody on the radio is rapping about just to get somebody's attention. Um, so just try to stay true to who you are as an artist, and let and everything else will work itself out.
So dope. Anything else, Mark, you want to?
Yeah, I had a question on my end. Ace, your fellow EMC member Wordsworth is peace to him, by the way, because he helps us out a lot on the social media end.
So,
But he has his own like hip hop tutorial, collegiate level classes.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
say this respectfully, but if you ever decide to start that avenue, you definitely be somebody to where like people can learn a lot from you if you ever decide to go through that avenue. Have you ever explored that idea? Has Words ever like said, hey, like led some inspiration your way and said, hey, you should be doing this too?
So there's a program called Deaf Education, Deaf Ed. The director, the creator of it, his name is Andre Benito Mountain. He was a middle school principal in Atlanta for a bunch of years. Now he's an English teacher, also still in Atlanta, but he's now the director of education at the Hip Hop Museum in the Bronx, New York. And he has a curriculum um, under the Deaf Ed name, and it's basically like different units. But his first unit, teaching about poetry and lyrics, he uses music from my catalog. So the very first teaching unit is referencing my music. So Beautiful is in there. There's like 10 or 12 songs of mine, maybe 20 songs, but it's a bunch of songs. And so he's going through the classroom, and the kids have to answer questions. They have to listen to the song. They have to answer the questions. What did the writer, what was he trying to express when he said this line, or what was he trying to say? How did you feel when you heard this line? So already my music is now being used as a teaching tool, which is kind of cool. Um, this past summer, or this past spring, I should say, I went and spoke at Baruch College in New York City to a couple of theater classes. This coming October, I believe it is October, I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak at Rutgers University to another class. So these opportunities are presenting themselves. I've spoken a few different middle schools and high schools over the years, but yeah, I could definitely see potentially a path where I could do something like that, and I would embrace it. I would love to do that.
It's awesome.
Well, Masta Ace, we want to thank you again, man. It's such an honor to be on the Zoom chat with you, or for you to be on the show with us, even. We really do want to give our praise to all the work that you've done, and it's very influential. We've learned a lot from your work, a lot from your music, and hopefully, others got a lot from this interview with you, and they're inspired, I'm sure, with their art as well.
Hope so. I
So
hope so.
salute to you, and thank you
Thank you.
for joining us today on the show.
Yeah, listen, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciated the questions. Very thoughtful questions, not the typical average questions that people ask. And it's always cool to when somebody is paying attention to the lyrics beyond just bopping their head to the song, and they're really getting into more into the lyrics. I like those kind of interviews. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Master Ace, would you do us a favor? Would you mind shouting out the IE? That would be so huge, I think, and inspirational to us.
Of course, of course. Yo, listen, man. Big up. This is Master Ace from Brooklyn, New York. I love being on the West Coast, but big ups to the Inland Empire, man. I've been out there before. I performed out there before. I hope I can get out there again and do something else. But big up to the whole IE. One love, y'all.
Man, that's so huge. Master Ace, thank you again for joining us, man. It's such an honor. Such an honor. And for those who are listening, of course, we drop episodes every Monday. Make sure you guys tune in. And peace to Master Ace. Go ahead, listen to his project. Stay tuned on the musical. That's going to be such a big deal. So keep tuned on that. And then also, you got some projects that are out. So make sure that you guys are following Master Ace. Where can they follow you, Master Ace, or get in contact with you or listen to your stuff?
I'm on Instagram, Masta Ace Pics, Pics, and I'm also on Twitter, just at Masta Ace, and then my Facebook is Masta Ace Official.
Man, you heard it here. All right, everybody. Peace out.
Peace.